Hi, this is Marina from Darkstar Astrology, and by popular request, I thought I'd better do this solar eclipse in August because it really is a big one. It's on August the 21st, and it falls at 28 Leo, which is the Decan 3, and also it falls on one of the big royal stars of Persia, Regulus, the famous fixed star in the heart of Leo the Lion. Now, obviously, the sun is very powerful in Leo. It rules Leo anyway. But the major thing that is of importance is the fact that the sun will blot out its power. So another thing is the sun in mundane astrology does signify the ruler of the country as well. So eclipses used to be feared as being an omen for the death of a king, as the moon blots out the sun's glorious rays. Now, in this case, the moon will cast a shadow over Donald Trump's yellow mane as well, because he happens to have Regulus rising in his birth chart, and it's conjunct his Mars as well. So, I mean, this is huge for him. The solar eclipse then is very important for the American people, as not only does it directly impact their leader, but it will be visible across the whole of the United States. And this is the first time this has happened since 1979. More than 90% of the sun will be covered in Washington, D.C., the throne of world power. I mean, it really is, like it or not. Decisions made in the White House have a huge effect on the rest of the world, even if the president himself is limited in the scope of his own power. Now, this is what Wiki has to say on the royal stars. They were believed to govern events in the world. Major disasters, breakthroughs, and historical phenomenons were seen as caused by the stars. When the royal stars were aligned accordingly, favourable conditions followed. And when they were aligned negatively, disaster was predicted. Now, because Regulus was one of the most influential of the royal stars, events that took place while Regulus was in dominance were amplified and grave, foreshadowing destruction. So that's what Wikipedia says. But in the case of the solar eclipse, I would say the alignment is actually quite positive. However, you could say that a solar eclipse in of itself is negatively aligned due to the moon blocking the sun's power. So therefore, this solar eclipse could have a malefic effect on leaders or elites who are connected with it, as Trump does. So it will be really interesting to test out this eclipse's effect as it plays out over the following 6 months, because an eclipse will last 6 months. So I did a bit of research into people that had the moon in Leo Decan 3, where this moon is going to be, because it's a new moon, so the sun and the moon will both be there. And it's interesting because we get Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, Eva Peron, and Gandhi, which are all really great examples of the moon in this decan. Therefore, this solar eclipse in August should bring formidable commanders to the fore in times of war, when life or death decisions need to be made quickly. Now, the moon also adds a nurturing touch to the decan in general, but we still get tough love, and that means any leaders will have to risk making short-term austerity measures or unpopular decisions for the sake of long-term prosperity. And the thing is, it seems these days they just don't like to do that. You see, ideally, a Leo Decan 3 solar eclipse will not sugarcoat for the sake of popularity. And in a sign that seems so ego-driven, it's surprising perhaps that this solar eclipse energy could actually be more about helping others rather than itself. Especially now that Regulus is in Virgo, which is more about service to others. Much is going to depend on the soul's evolution of those who are touched by this eclipse. So harsh aspects from their own chart could twist this energy into a ruthless drive with tyrannical tendencies. But mostly the moon here is admired for generating great courage. Heads of nations, companies, or family become trailblazers and will do whatever it takes to protect those in their care. So this is the roaring lioness who protects her cubs, and that's the most obvious symbol of this solar eclipse, I would say. But at the mundane level, this is a great patriot willing to die for their country. And it's certainly best to keep these natives as your friend and not their enemy, or rather these leaders. Loyalty is their number one demand, so woe betide you if you betray them. Especially those who have their moon close to the fixed star Alphard, which is actually more about poison. But I guess with this moon, it's going to be more to do with Regulus. But we can't ignore the general emphasis of the whole of the decan. I think it's quite strong anyway. So at worst, those touched by this powerful solar eclipse will suffer greatly if they stoop to revenge. And this is a very Regulus trait. And they won't care who else they bring down with them. So, there's positives and negatives, always is, with any eclipse. So the aspects are interesting because I think they kind of reflect the two paradigms that are going on at the moment, because we've got the sort of radical, I suppose, Antifa type of people, the SJWs, the social justice warriors, and the anti-Trumpsters and the progressives, which I think is Moon trine Uranus, because this aspect brings out an abundance of radical and innovative energy, rebels who won't give a fig about conforming to the status quo. This aspect should bring to fruition personal freedom, revolution, and electric genius. I also think, though, this could also be the new, I don't really know what to call it, really. I mean, there is the alt-right as well, and that is quite Uranian because it's very individualistic. And let's face it, I mean, that is being rebellious these days because so many of them are getting banned from social media. And even the so-called, actually it's more like the alt-light, they call them, which people like Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux, I guess Milo. I don't know what's happened to Milo. He's just disappeared. But I mean, even they're being called like far right and alt-right. So now it seems that they're just kind of joining up with the alt-right and forming a sort of an amalgamation there, really. So I don't know. I don't know about this Uranus. It could be either side or both sides, really. And we tend to want to pull up, polarize things and say, oh, well, that's them and this is them and whoever. But, it can be moved around. It just depends on who's looking at it. And what is interesting is that when I wrote this, I think before I knew about this fire that happened in England in London with this tower block that just had this freak fire, and it was awful. It just melted the whole thing and loads of people died. I don't even know what the death toll is now. I think it was 45. I'm not sure. Maybe more. Anyway, for this aspect, I wrote there could be activism relating to improving the conditions of those living in squalor, creating futuristic space-age housing that uses high-tech methods of heating or lighting is emphasized at this time. I mean, this dangerous building, basically, built in the 60s probably, just, it was unsafe in terms of fireproofing. So that's been in the news a lot in England. Now, I don't know whether that's going to sort of start a thing about housing and how people are housed, because with more and more the population growing in cities now, there isn't much space and people are being pushed into these tiny little high-rise hutches, basically. And there's just going to be more of that because it's cheap and you can make money. So I'm wondering whether it's funny because Trump is famous for restoring kind of buildings, and high rises and towers. And I'm just wondering whether that will be an issue for the next 6 months. I wonder if there's going to be more of these kind of fires in towers. I don't know. Anyway, so that's one thing. The other aspect is Moon conjunct Mars, which is, I was probably going to say this is more to do with the nationalists, because it's about protecting the family and those they love. It's definitely if you think of if nationalism is like an extended family, then that's very moon conjunct Mars as well. They don't like to reveal so much on the outside because they think, well, they don't like to reveal who they love so much on the outside because they think that it weakens their position. Everything is about strategy. Instincts are extra sensitive, and there's a super fast reaction to any outside threat. Moon Mars can be very physical aspect. It's most useful really in terms of competitive sport like tennis or fencing, when one has to anticipate the moves of one's opponents. So those touched by this eclipse, this aspect during this eclipse, will be excellent in an emergency situation. A good example of this aspect would be a nurse out on the battlefield who needs to remain calm while sensing quickly who to treat first. So those are the aspects, and it seems to be playing out already. So this eclipse, even though sometimes it's not yet, but I think the effects of them can start. Something as big as an eclipse on Regulus, I think you feel it probably a month before, and we are kind of a month before now. So the fixed star Regulus, let's focus on him. He is with the sun. He is power, authority, great influence over friends, honor and riches, but violence, trouble, and ultimate disgrace and ruin, sickness, fevers, benefits seldom last. So I guess with the sun, it's because the sun kind of burns bright, doesn't it? And maybe it doesn't, it's just almost overpowering. With the moon, it's a bit different. With the moon, Regulus is occult interests, powerful friends, danger from enemies and false friends, gain by speculation, public prominence, great power, honor, wealth. But then even with this, it says benefits seldom last, violence, trouble, and sickness. So it's really, Regulus is such, this is the thing that they say about all the royal stars, is that they kind of come with a price. I think that's what it is. You can shoot to the top very rapidly, but then it's kind of taken away from you very easily if you don't. I think it's if your morals aren't as strong as the power you are given. So I've made this analogy before. It's, the Lords of the Rings, the power of the ring just corrupts people. So yeah. Now Regulus has moved into Virgo, but its wide orb does stretch back to 28 Leo, where this eclipse is still. So this is going to be interesting because it's the first eclipse on Regulus since its ingress into Virgo. And in the Regulus post, if you want to go to Darkstar and have a read, because it's quite a long one, I do go into detail about what this shift might mean. But this solar eclipse may well give us a taste of the long-term influence of Regulus in Virgo. So in that article, I said, could Regulus crossing this symbolic Sphinx cusp, try saying that quickly with a drink in your hand, Leo into Virgo, could that transition herald the age of Aquarius? Many astrologers speculate that Virgo will teach Leo to put aside ego, dispense personal glory, and become more humanitarian and have more respect for the Mother Earth itself. Now, other starseed type commentators describe a switch from service to self, which is Leo, towards service to others, which could be Virgo, service, or Aquarius, which is kind of others, the opposite of Leo. Now, all this assumes that Leo's ego is somehow a bad thing. Conversely, however, those with a weak sense of self are also those that suffer from narcissistic personality disorders and other related dark triad traits. Again, if you want to look into this deeper, go to Darkstar Astrology because I've done a whole post on that. So I'll put links under this video so you can see them. So without strong sovereignty, service to others can become pathological altruism. So does this mean that Regulus into Virgo leaves us with a feminized, impotent neuter cat? No, certainly not. A positive transition of Regulus into Virgo should hopefully give us a Hieros Gamos, which is the inner marriage within ourselves. Maybe we shall learn the secret of the Sphinx in the next 6 months. Well, that's a tall order, but you never know. Now, another positive alignment is a minor grand trine that you can see on the chart, which is around 20 degrees of the fire and air signs, which I would say is a great gift of courage and should bring out the positive qualities of Regulus. Mars is conjunct the North Node in the fiercely protective Great Bear Ursa Major. So there's also a very strong Queen Mother archetype as well. That's why I used Lizzie the First for this to illustrate it. It's also interesting that Ceres is opposite Pluto. And I looked at those two in aspect in the past, around 2010, and found that the confrontation and compromising of these two dwarf planets are a necessary rebalancing of nature, making sure humanity honours and respects the importance of both God, which is a scientific linear progress, and Goddess, which is natural cycles and conservation. So, in summary, I think this is a time for being as brave as Regulus and reveal those plans or person that you have been hiding from the world. If any of your personal planets are in aspect to this eclipse, then the time is ripe for showing off those great new ideas. You should generate much interest and have people fawning all over you. Like Regulus, you should feel quite the star. However, beware of dropping old friends in favour of arse-licking sycophants. For these kinds of people will drop you like a hot potato as soon as you are not top dog anymore. This is as true for business as it is for love. You might get flattered into dropping your regular partner for a cute young gold digger. This is a warning that comes with Regulus and why they say that this star can bring a fall from grace. But this only happens if you become so up your own behind that you start to believe you actually are divine, like that Roman Emperor Caligula. Otherwise, if the brave lion is honourable in his intentions, this solar eclipse could be a great opportunity to air one's grievances and confront long overdue issues that have been festering for a while. A Regulus moon is not sneaky or underhand, for its huge shining ego is in your face and has no shame. Those who have strong connections to this solar eclipse should front out their enemies and just be themselves, but avoid vengeance, as always, at all costs. The biggest weakness of Regulus is the temptation to go for the jugular if someone knocks their crown off. But if you find something that you are so attuned to that it fulfills your soul, something that gives you happiness from head to toe, then you're not likely to let any personal attacks knock you off centre. You will need less approval from others if your heart is motivated by the sheer pleasure of doing what you love. Regulus types could learn at this time that they will not fall from grace if they find the thing they love to do. So Regulus has a big heart. It's the heart of the lion after all. So as long as the heart is kept happy, allowed to love and create without worrying what people think of its creations, then all is well. But the moment he tries too hard to be popular is when he can start to get into a pickle. When you are shining that brightly, you don't need to push it. You will only give your audience sunburn. For this golden solar eclipse, it will be very hard to keep anything in the dark. We will need to be brave enough to be totally, even brutally honest. We will be forced to come clean about any secrets as well. In love, faint heart never won no fair maiden, so be prepared to wear your heart on your sleeve. Skulking cowards do not do well under this solar eclipse. Basically, it's so bright that there will be nowhere to hide. So, now that's the sort of personal way of looking at it. But on a geopolitical scale, one thing that is happening in the greater scheme of things is this rebalancing. And I've been listening to this. I just think she's really interesting. Her name's Lada Ray. I think I've mentioned her in other videos. She came up with this theory that the world is yin and yang, and that the rich north is very yang energy, and the poor south or southern hemisphere, apart from Australia, because that's still northern hemisphere, or originated from northern hemisphere, is like the poor south, is very yin. So, and the yin tends to need to be looked after by the yang, but then the yang can be far too warrior-like, very Marsy. Basically, it's, you know, it's like the balance between Mars and Venus, really. So she says that Russia is like the balancer because it's the only country in the world that is both yin and yang. Now, she is Russian, so she could be a little bit biased, but you know, we listen to people who are from the West all the time, and you know, it's good to get a perspective from people who actually come from Russia and know a bit more about the history. So I do like to listen to her, and I do think it's not just her, by the way. There are other commentators who have been predicting for a long time this Earth shift, and that America at some point is going to collapse. And I do think with this eclipse on Regulus, it may be the start of it, just because it's too much of a coincidence with Donald Trump being that he's got Regulus, you know, rising. So I think he's going to be the fall guy. I think he wasn't meant to be put in that position. I don't think. I can't believe that it was. I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe it was an intentional thing. Maybe it was all like people. He went on the populist. He promised, you know, to make America great again. So who can resist that? Everything he promised was something that ordinary people just really would respond to. So maybe it was a deliberate sort of reverse psychology thing where it was supposed to be Hillary. She was the NWO candidate, and Trump wasn't supposed to get in there. But who knows? Maybe he was, because then we can blame it all on him when it all goes wrong. Because it's not looking good for the US. I mean, it's not looking good for the West anyway. I'm not just saying the US as well. It's Europe. I just think we're sinking. I think we're absolutely sinking, and we are so weak that the first thing that goes when a body is weak is immunity, and we're not immune. We're not. We have no immunity anymore. Our borders are completely gone, and we're just letting everybody in. And Trump is, to me, he's almost like, you know, that band that were playing on the Titanic when it was sinking. It's like, yeah, we're going to make it great again. I just think it's too late. I think the West it's too late for the West. I just think it is invade the world, invite the world. It's just, I can't go into too much of a political rant really, but you can see that it's rebalancing. I think what's happening is the West has been too yang, it's been too aggressive, it's been too Marsy, and now it's gone weak. It's gone totally the other way, and the South, the yin South, are now suddenly, you know, they've got their strength. They're coming in. They go, all right, we want a bit of this wealth now. We want some of this materialism. Come on, give us that. Enough of being spiritual and poor. And that's really the state of India as well. So, the Far East, China, India, they are thriving. Their birth rates are up. The importance of the family is there. It's not happening in the West. So it's kind of weird. This Regulus eclipse, it's, I don't know. I don't know if this is just going to reignite the roaring lion of the... It's actually the Watcher of the North out of all the four stars. Actually, yeah, I should mention that these royal stars, they are the four corners of the earth. You see them on the tarot cards as well. So we've got Michael, which is Aldebaran. He's the Watcher of the East. He represents the bull. Antares is the Scorpion, Oriel, and he's the Watcher of the West. Gabriel is Fomalhaut, and that's the Watcher of the South, and that's definitely a more kind of yin energy for sure. And yes, Raphael is the healing archangel. So Regulus is the healer, and he's the Watcher of the North. And they're also the famous four horsemen of the apocalypse as well. So there is a bit of a apocalyptic theme coming up with this. Also, these four stars did mark the equinoxes and the solstices as well. Aldebaran was Aries point in 4000 BC. Antares was Libra. This was about 3000 years BC for all of these. Fomalhaut was 0 Capricorn, and so Regulus was 0 Cancer. So these are the four guardians of the heavens. And Regulus would be the summer solstice, the guardian of the summer solstice, which is very important for the Northern Hemisphere as well. I mean, we really do worship the sun because we're so dependent on it for our season. So I would definitely say that out of all the royal stars of Persia, that Regulus would definitely, it represents the West for sure. How many lions are there in heraldry and symbology for the West, even though it's not native to the West. We don't have lions walking around like Stonehenge, but it's used to represent the West as a symbolic thing and royalty and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that fits. And also, we call it the West, don't we? But it is the Northern Hemisphere. Antares, interestingly, the sting of the scorpion, is the Watcher of the West. So I would say that is the West's negative side. The West has been an invader. But I see, this is what I don't understand. I wouldn't say that the Southern Hemisphere is completely yin, because part of her map that Lardere shows is like a lot of the Middle East is also in the yin side, and it also puts Turkey in the yin side. Now, I don't know about that, because the Ottoman Empire was hardly yin. I do get that for Africa, and I do get that for India, for sure. But South America, possibly, yes. But because they were invaded by the North. But I don't really get this. I don't think that works for the Middle East somehow. Plus, another thing about the Middle East, it is rich in terms of oil, and it's got power because of that. So anyway, okay, back to Regulus. What do we think about Regulus? What's it going to do? Well, I'm just going to look at all the countries' charts that I think are important. Certainly going to affect the United States. There's no way that we can avoid that, mainly because of the path itself and Donald Trump. But it also, Lilith and the moon are in opposition at 27 Leo Aquarius. The moon of the USA is at 27 Aquarius. So this is the eclipse is going to be opposite its moon. So that's a big deal. The eclipse falls on the United States Lilith and George Soros's Lilith, which is interesting. Well, it's opposite George Soros's Lilith at 28 Aquarius. So a bit of sorcery going on there, I think. It will fall on Israel's Mars, which is at 28 Leo. It will fall on Benjamin Netanyahu's Mars as well, which is also at the end of 2642 Leo. It will fall on Vladimir Putin's Lilith at 27 Leo. This is quite mad. I don't consider Lilith to be so important, especially in mundane astrology, but it pops up, and when it does, I don't ignore it. And when there's such a coincidence, like this kind of synchronicity with it being activated for this eclipse, plus it connects George Soros, USA, and Vladimir Putin. What could that possibly mean? Well, all I know is that Soros originally came from Hungary. I don't know if he still lives there, but he's been always criticizing Putin's actions in Syria, calling them war crimes, and then Putin banned Soros' charities in inverted commas. They've been banned in Russia, but there was some fake news saying that Putin wanted to arrest Soros, but that's fake. But you could see them as mortal enemies, really, and their Liliths are opposite each other, and that's going to get triggered by this eclipse. So I wonder if they'll have a bit of a blow up. Now the EU is going to be affected because its Pluto's at 28 Leo as well. So that's another one in the firing line. So what I think is going to happen is, I don't think there'll be some great collapse, because people have been predicting that for a long time with the West and the dollar and all this kind of like doomsday kind of scenario. I think that it's a long, slow, boiling frog death for the West. It really is. It's sad, but it has to happen. It has to happen because basically it's been overtaken by, I don't know, parasites. I think that's basically, if we think of it as a human body, everything that was, I suppose this is, it's a greedy human body. It's the West just became bloated and didn't know when to stop. So it's got bloated, it's got sluggish, its immune system's gone down because it just ate too much sugar and feasted too much and didn't concentrate on its spiritual health, really. It's just become depraved, and this is the result. So when you don't treat your body like a temple, and let anyone use it, basically, it's vulnerable. It becomes vulnerable to infection. And yes, you do need to. You can't keep yourself in a bubble, because then you'd never develop any immunity in the first place. But with Regulus going into Virgo is chaste. Virgo is about re-virginalizing yourself. So this is what's happening. Purification is happening somehow in the West, but in order for it to be repurified, it has to break down, doesn't it? It has to break down into manure, into shit. And then it can be cleaned away, really. At the moment, the most ugliest side of it is all just festering and coming out, and it's not nice. But one thing that I thought might happen is, this was my little theory of George Soros and Putin. I'm wondering. It's very strange that I'm wondering if Soros and Putin are in it together, and it's almost like Europe is deliberately being opened up to population replacement. And what happens when that happens is that people will always gravitate to their own kind. And I think maybe Putin wants Europeans to move into Russia because he needs he needs a new population, doesn't he? The population of Russia isn't exactly high, but then who the heck wants to go and live in Russia? Well, there's the Eastern European bloc. I mean, they're a lot warmer. So we'll see. Anyway, if Russia is the great balancer, as Larderay says, then it's all got to take its course. And I think this Regulus eclipse is just the start of this slow boiling of the frog of the West, really. And as a Westerner, I don't like to see that. But at the same time, I think it's necessary because it can't go on as it is. We're just going to have more and more and more and more terrorist things going on so that it becomes normalized. And then I wonder, because the West is basically Europe and the USA. You know, we are connected. I don't know about Australia; it's a bit far away. But who's going to? The motherland for the United States is Europe. So if the United States goes down, if the United States is affected by this eclipse and it goes down, and actually so is Europe, so is EU, because Pluto is there too. And Pluto is pretty death-like when that gets activated. But again, it's a long, slow, but very thorough colonic detoxification, isn't it, really, of Europe? I don't know. I can't think of... we'll just have to see. I can't think of what's going to happen. On a personal level, I've already said, but on a geopolitical level, we just know that this is the dark times. This is the dark ages, but there is always resurrection, you see. There is always resurrection. And for the EU, if it's going to be their Pluto that's being zapped by this eclipse, then that is about resurrection. But it could resurrect as, Europe's always Europe's always been connected with each other, even though they've been separate states. The monarchies are always intermarrying, so there was always that was the way that they would build good relations in the past. Now I don't know how we do it, unless Europe gets swallowed up by Russia. Who knows? I think I'll be quite glad of it, to be honest. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, as for how long the effects of this eclipse will last, usually it's 6 months, but because this one is a total solar eclipse, you're supposed to give a year for each minute that it's in total eclipsitude. I don't know if that's a word, but anyway, so it's going to be totally eclipted for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So this eclipse could last the next 2.5 years, roughly. So it's long lasting. And during that time, there's going to be a few elections. So I will get back to it, I think, and see what happens. Germany's elections are going to be important, but it doesn't affect Germany's chart or Merkel's chart at all, this eclipse. So probably not. It's more to do with the EU. So we'll see what happens to the EU in the next 2.5 years. But one thing about us in the West, because our technology is all over the world, English is probably, English is the language of the internet. So because of that, we get a distorted view of how powerful the West is. I mean, it is powerful in terms of its technology, yes. In terms of making weapons and bombs and God knows what else, destructive weapons, we are great. And that's probably why wars need to be made all the time in the West, because that's what keeps the money game going and the bankers going. Because what else do we produce apart from technology? So when there's no more demand for that, if it could only be used in a different way, in a less destructive way, maybe this is what is going on now. One thing as well is our populations are getting smaller. They're bigger than they were, like in medieval times, obviously, but in proportion to the rest of the world, we are shrinking. So, we can't hide behind our technology forever. Or are we just going to, I don't know, commit genocide on populations who are bigger than ours? What the hell? So, that's something to think about. That's something to think about as well. But also, I want to make this clear. I'm not blaming ordinary Westerners. This is the problem, is that the average working class person doesn't, we're just cannon fodder. We're not the people who are anywhere near in power or responsible for these for selling weapons all over the world and starting wars. Really, it's the elites of the West, but at the same time, the elites of other places conspire with the West as well, because otherwise, surely they wouldn't have let them invade their yin lands as well. There are warriors in these yin lands. They're not just completely helpless. So, but it's the elites all over the world, and I'm not gonna blame it all on the West in terms of it's the people on the street, the average people, and it's wrong that those people should pay the price for the elites and what they've done to them. So, we as ordinary people, if we're strong with our families, this is the important thing, is we shall overcome. That's the thing. If you haven't been destroyed culturally, if you haven't been destroyed as a family, then this decay of the West it's not going to affect you. It's going to affect the elites who are so vampiric for power that they're going a bit crazy now because they are losing their power. That's all it is. But normal average people they'll find a way to survive. They always do. So I don't want to put a pessimistic end on this podcast. And let's just remind ourselves what I said at the end of it, is find what you love, do what you love, think heart-centered, protect yourself. You're allowed to defend yourself. Don't, we're not going to just lay down and let our culture be taken over. That's another thing, You can just be strong in your culture and in your tribe, because that's at the end of the day, that's the only way you're going to survive. Family, tribe, people who are bonded by a common spirit would be the best word. And if that's a religion, it's religion, sod it, doesn't matter, whatever it is. But whatever it is it's heartfelt. It's to do with the sacredness of the land, which was always sacred in the past. And the land should support the people that live with it and not off it. Because Regulus is about creativity, and creativity is not parasitical. Creativity creates, and it doesn't just take, it gives back as well. All right then, that brings me to the end. Please do subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications, and it would be really, really, really lovely if you become a Patreon, because I'm no longer monetizing these videos. So I really, really rely on donations. All right then. All the best. Bye-bye.